Welcome back, everyone. I have Amy Webb back with me today. Amy is a child development writer. She is also the Thoughtful Parent organizer at thoughtfulparent.com. And she has books and courses and parent coaching there and all kinds of other great stuff that we're talking about today. So welcome back, Amy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Amy, when we talk about child's temperament, what is that specifically? What are you referring to? And then how does my approach as a parent need to possibly change based on my child's temperament?
Yeah, so there's, a whole line of research that's going on for decades now about temperament, and really it has to do with sort of your child's approach to the world. And so it can include things like energy level and how they approach new situations, whether they're very kind of shy and fearful about new situations, where they just jump right in and are not afraid of anything. It can be how their kind of self-control and self-management, how their emotional reactions are, how kind of intense of their emotional reactions, all those things fit into the idea of temperament. And I like to say, and maybe you'll appreciate this since you're an author, but the temperament is sort of like the setting of a book. It's sort of in the background. A lot of people don't really notice it, but then it plays a huge role in the story, right? Because if you have a book that in the country is a lot different than a book set in a city. So the same thing with temperament. Temperament's kind of behind the scenes, but it has a lot to do with how your child interacts with the world. And so whether they face the world with like a lot of energy and gusto, or whether they're sort of reserved and shy and kind of need a little time to warm up, that affects how other people interact with them, how you interact with them. And so it does play a big role in child development, and it's something that I think sometimes is a little bit overlooked. So based on that, if you think about, okay, what my child's temperament be, and I think most parents kind of have a sense of that pretty early on, then that affects how you parent them. Because if you have a child who's, for example, very strong-willed, then the type of discipline strategies and things that you're going to have to use might be a little bit different than if you have a child who's a little more laid back, easygoing. They might accept correction very easily. Things like that change a lot depending on temperament. And so I think it's a fascinating thing to learn about your child, and it can really help you in parenting situations.
Yeah, I could see how that would really come into play if you had a very sensitive child, and maybe your approach was a little bit more boisterous or more stern. That might actually crush their spirit a little bit. Is that kind of what you're
right? Right. Yeah, exactly. That fit between the child's temperament and the parent's temperament can sometimes it can go really well, or it can be a little bit challenging, like you're saying, depending on how, if you have a very different temperament than your child, sometimes it can cause a little bit of a challenge. And you have to learn, okay, how can I interact with my child in a way that meets their needs, even though it's maybe a little bit different from my normal temperament, things like that, kind of modifying your approach based on how your child's reacting to you and to your temperament. So yeah, it can really affect things as a parent.
So when you are thinking about temperament as a parent, do you anticipate that temperament is going to stay the same their whole entire lives? Or do you think temperament is it can shift and change as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. The research is kind of mixed on this. I don't think it's deterministic. It's not like it's set in stone. And, if you have a child, let's say, that is kind of shy or introverted, they'll definitely stay that way their whole life. A lot of it, I think, depends on their life experiences and how people interact with them, and either reinforce their temperament or maybe try to, get them to change their temperament. And so I think it can change to a certain extent, and based on what their goals are and what kind of things that they need to do to meet those goals, then I think it can change a little bit. But I do also think that there's something to be said for kind of recognizing and appreciating kind of your child's innate spirit, or their temperament, and that some parts of it might not really change a lot. If you have a child who from the get-go was just very outgoing and extremely social, they're not going to completely flip usually and become introverted. That seemed likely, but there might be a little bit of variation, but it stays pretty consistent. But slight variations can happen based on their life experiences.
So maybe that would be a good indicator or a red flag for a parent if you had a child who was happy-go-lucky and then suddenly wasn't, that something else is going on that you need to look into.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because that can really happen. And so if you see a dramatic shift in how your child is interacting with the world, that sometimes can be a red flag.
Yeah, yeah. So those toddlers that are very reactional, we'll call them, they have those big emotions and they're kind of hard to contend with at times. Why can't they just get over it? Why can't they just stop and be good?
I mean, I think we've all been there, most of us, with the toddler situation, and it can be very challenging. So I think from a parenting perspective, we kind of have to put ourselves into our toddler's shoes a little bit, and remember that they've only been around for a few years, and they don't have all the skills that we adults have in terms of emotional regulation. And so it's not usually that they're trying to act up or they're trying to misbehave. It's just when those big events kind of take them over, their rational brain it's not really well developed yet anyway. But what is there is taken over by that big emotion, and they have a hard time and they melt down or have a tantrum. And so it's just sort of the way toddlers are, and you have to kind of go into toddler parenting with that expectation that there's going to be some of that, there's going to be some chaos, and so going in that's you're not doing anything wrong as a parent, that toddlers they have those really big reactions, and they don't have the life experience also that we have, to know that, okay, everything's going to be okay in a few minutes, whatever happened will feel better, and if you scrape your knee or whatever, it's not going to hurt forever. The pain goes away, but they don't have that life experience to know. And so just kind of helping them understand and empathize a little bit with what they're going through. They eventually get a little bit more skill in emotional regulation over time.
Is there actual like realistic or effective toddler calming strategies that you could probably do?
Yeah, I mean, there are you can try as parents, and I think usually it helps to kind of practice things when everything's calm, right? And so before they have the tantrum or the meltdown, you could talk about, and there's a lot of great, resources out there now, books and podcasts and things that you can talk to your child about. Hey, when I feel upset, I can take a deep breath, or I can go run around outside, or I can go sit in a quiet space, maybe have, like sensory items to play with, Play-Doh or something like that. And so give them some ideas. And when the meltdown or the tantrum happens, you can try to suggest those things and remind them to take deep breaths and all that. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. When they're that young, it is hard to kind of get them to that routine of learning how to calm themselves. But over time, it does really help. You just have to be patient and keep trying those different strategies, because every child is different too. Some kids want to be left alone when they're having, a meltdown or something. Some kids want to be hugged, and so it kind of depends on your child how what calming strategy is going to work for them. But those things can help over time for sure.
Yeah, I could see how that would definitely help a toddler at least even address what they're feeling. I mean, if they know that they have to calm down, then they can probably logically reason that they're upset, maybe not identify jealous
Right.
or angry, but they know they're upset anyway, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
what if I do have a toddler who is aggressive? I'm working on the calming strategies with them, but they're not very kind to their siblings or to their classmates. How do I redirect them without crushing their spirit, keeping in mind their temperament, and keeping all those pieces in line? What can I do?
Yeah, it can be hard sometimes in those situations, especially like you said, if a toddler is aggressive or sort of acting out. one thing I think is helpful for parents to kind of make the distinction to their kids is the distinction between what you're feeling, the emotion that they're experiencing, and the behavior. So this is something we talk about a lot with like positive parenting strategies is, it's okay to feel sad or upset. All those emotions are okay. And, help them understand that they're not bad for feeling those emotions, but the behavior, sometimes there's boundaries around that, right? So if you're really sad, really angry or frustrated, you can feel that and that's okay, but you hit your sister or what, whatever the boundary is that you're trying to set. And so kind of making that distinction between behavior and emotion, I think sometimes helps, because it's not that you're a bad kid or that it's just that you're upset, but we have to not do certain things that hurt other people. And so I think helping them make that distinction, okay, and then talk about what are some other ways you can handle that big emotion. If you're very upset or very angry, maybe you can hit a pillow or go outside, or something that doesn't involve hurting another person, to take that emotion out in some way that's a little bit healthier and more positive. And so over time, hopefully they'll learn, when I get upset, I don't need to hit somebody. I can go do this other thing that doesn't hurt anybody and is safer. And so I think, again, it takes time for kids to learn those skills, but making that distinction, I think, can help.
Yeah. And it sounds like if parents can get into almost like a habit of showing the kids the next step, maybe, is that pretty accurate? Like instead of just parentally reacting and say, stop, stop, don't hit your sister, you go to your room, whatever. If they could like say, okay, you're upset, like you said, and I'm not going to tolerate this kind of behavior. So let's separate that out.
Yeah, I think that's right. And give them another strategy too, so that, as this happens, and it will happen again, I'm sure, but as they mature, then it'll start to sink in. Like you're saying, it makes it a habit. Okay, I don't have to hit, I can do this. I can go, run outside. I can go hit a pillow or whatever. I don't have to hit my sister when I'm upset. I can do something else. And so it is sort of a habit thing. It really is, because I think our first reaction is to just say, stop that, quit, but the kids can establish a new habit too over time. Once their parent is saying, okay, you can do something else besides hit, then they start getting into the habit. When they feel upset, they don't just go straight to hitting right away. There's some other option that's a little more positive and safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And we both know that actively disciplining a toddler, at least my experience has been, it's not very productive.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they have a hard time, sometimes, with the self-control piece. And so we have to really have different strategies to kind of step in and figure out what's going to help them learn a new way of doing things.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I think parents feel kind of like you're being soft on the kids. You need to be firmer. Do you ever have that situation where you have to kind of teach the parents to maybe change their normal routine?
Oh yeah, I hear that all the time from parents, that, I think it's just natural for us to kind of emulate the way that we were raised, and that those words come out and you don't even realize, like, I sound just like my mother, or, whoever it was. And, and so I think it's part of it is really being like, mindful and intentional, as to say, okay, if I really want to approach this differently than my parents did, perhaps, then I need to kind of re-educate, and to a certain extent, myself, and try to learn some new strategies that to do this in a different, because I think it's true. I mean, and even when I was growing up, I don't think this was as prevalent as it is today, with kind of positive parenting and taking a more, it's not really about being soft. And I think that is a big hurdle that a lot of parents get over, but it's about modeling and teaching, a different set of skills to our children. And so it does take a little time to kind of reorient to a different approach. And but yeah, parents are definitely, I see that all the time. They take it and they really want to learn a new way of handling it, because at least in some situations, they didn't, always experience the kind of parenting that they want to parent their own children. And so they want to do something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good point too, is that if you started off one way, it doesn't mean you have to follow that way. If you start off being a little more punitive, you could actually be a little more of a teacher, and your kid's still going to probably adapt to that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can change. There's no, you don't have to stick with the same the same pattern. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now you said you have a temperament quiz, and we're going to include it in the email. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it's a short temperament quiz. It's kind of a shortened down, condensed version. But if you are curious about what your child's temperament is, it gives you a little insight to kind of on the spectrum. Are they more, shy, introverted, or strong-willed, extroverted? It kind of just gives a little indicator. It's not scientific, it's not official, but it does give you a little bit of an idea, so you know kind of where to go from there and what resources to look up for that might help you with your child.
Awesome, awesome. I might try it on my high schooler.
Yeah, sure. It's for, you never know.
Well, Amy, you are just a wealth of knowledge and a great resource for parents. And I hope that they'll visit your website and look at your books, and maybe even just be interested in talking to you as a parent coach as well. So thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Good, good. Bye bye.
Okay, thanks. Take care.
You
Bye.
too.